Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, the host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today, Darlene Green. Or am I supposed to say the full name?
No, you're perfectly fine with Darlene Green. There, a lot of time in my military life, I was Bennett, so sometimes people more know me that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, when I first got in the Navy, this is on me, and then I'll get to you. My last name was when my grandparents came to the United States. They didn't care what people said their name was because they were French, and it was they called it everything. And then we used Parcaut when I was in high school and everything else. Got in the Navy, and then I was stationed at Camp Pendleton down towards San Diego. Ended up getting into modeling and acting when I was down there, and so I changed it to the French pronunciation, which is Parcaut, and I got so much grief in the whole, for they're like, oh no, that's not HM1 Parcaut, Parcaut, it's HM1 Parcaut. People in the military were hard on each other, but that's why we're good to each other.
So. It's just like a family, right? You beat your brothers up.
Yeah. All right. So first questions I ask, it's really the only one I ask, is what service and why did you pick it?
Yeah, Navy, 20 years Navy, retired commander. Picked it because I wanted to fly. My dad did 30 years Air Force, and I thought flying looked like the coolest thing on the planet. And he brought home the first picture of the first woman fighter pilots one day, and I looked at that and thought, that's just got to be the coolest thing on the planet. So I was intending on flying, and somewhere around my second year of college, my eyes went bad. So that was it for flying, and I really wasn't that interested in Navy ships, so to speak. But my dad, even my commissioning day, I did University of Virginia, Navy ROTC. My commissioning day, my dad was still saying, I could get you an Air Force commission. I really could. And I said, Dad, I'm like indoctrinated into Navy at this point. The Air Force is all, it's so funny, even just in something like school. So yeah, it was easy for me.
Yeah, but Dad, when you got in, it was right when they just switched it over from the Army.
Yeah, kind of. Very similar, yeah.
Totally different. You grew that thing. Now it's a totally different service. It's not the same. But and for me, you probably heard this through if you listen to my stuff, but I'm probably the only corpsman that's never been on a ship, or anybody who's been in the Navy, because I was stationed with the Marines, and then I got stationed back to Camp Pendleton, and I worked on my bachelor's and master's, and everybody's like, "You're going to go in as an officer?" I'm like, "No, because I'd be stuck on a ship. I don't want to be on a ship."
Why does anybody? When my daughters, so I have a daughter that graduated from the Naval Academy and another daughter that graduated from the Air Force Academy, and I have two sons that were both Marines, and one Marine became a Navy pilot. But I will tell you that when the kids would talk to me about the military, I would say, "You really want to go Air Force?" You really do. Like, do you really want to be out at sea for 11-month deployments? And are you sure? So anyway, yeah. Two of them are still active duty now. The Navy daughter just transitioned out just in the last couple of months.
Wow. Yeah. My son's in the Army. I mean, he's airborne medic. Now he's actually deployed in Korea, which, it's not that bad of a place, but it's still close enough to North Korea. It's funny how many people, when you say that, who are civilians, they go, north or south? Yeah, they won't let us in the north unless they would say we're actually, doing something wrong if we're coming in through the north.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you said 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. When you joined, did you think you were going to stay in for 20 years?
Oh, I absolutely thought I was doing my payback tour for my Navy, for my college tuition, essentially, and scholarship, and that would be it. But I absolutely loved it. And I found myself 4 years out of school, and I was in charge of 55 people, ages 18 to 65. I had military and civilian, half and half. I had half men, half women. I had thousands of dollars in budget, thousands of customers. I was an officer in charge of a personnel support detachment. My boss was in another state. And I thought, none of my peers are doing anything like this. It was absolutely extraordinary. 6 departments and a leadership playground, really a sandbox. And so I learned so much, and I was really enjoying it. And then they said, "Hey, we'd like to send you to Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and pay you to go to school." And I said, "Sign me up. I'll be happy to do that." And then the one time I will say that I did look at getting out was after my second daughter was born in my payback tour, I had my first daughter while I was at Monterey, California, but my second one in the DC area. She had a very challenged delivery and birth, and it was touch and go for days. And we were tracking her very closely for months after that. And it was about that time that they said, I don't care what your designator or what you've done in the past, everyone's going to see. We need everybody at sea. And I just said, look, I've got a 4-month-old. I'm not going to see. I'm just not going to leave a baby that we're not even sure if she's going to be okay. We weren't sure if she was going to live. We weren't sure if she was going to walk, talk, anything. And this was the one that, by the way, went through the Air Force Academy. And anyway, she's fabulous. But at the time, we didn't know. And so I actually looked at getting out at that point, had a letter of resignation in. And all of my bosses, I had actually deep selected for promotion early ahead of my peers. So I had been promoted early, and they were like, please don't get out. And so they finally said, why don't you look at becoming a TAR and taking care of our reservists? We'll send you to command. And I said, I don't have to go to sea. And they're like, no. I'm like, sign me up. I'm happy to do that. So I finished my career taking care of reservists and having commands of, in my last command, I had 1,200 people and 800 Navy and 400 Marines, and helped get them administratively, medically, training wise, ready to go deploy. And I'll tell you that all of my commands were really special. But the thing that I'm most proud of is something that I think you would really enjoy hearing about, because you're all about paying it forward and taking care of our veterans. And you also understand how little we have done in taking care of them as they transition back. And what was happening for my command is that people were being plucked out one at a time, and they were getting transitioned over and dropped into Afghanistan or wherever as an individual deployment. And they didn't have a supporting unit necessarily, and their spouses didn't have any kind of support structure, and they were gone a year. And they came back, and I would sit with them before they'd go, and I'd sit with them when they came back, and they weren't doing very well. And no surprise, they all thought individually that they were broken. They weren't going to tell anybody they were broken. They weren't going to tell anybody their marriages were struggling. But you could see the symptoms of PTSD. You could see the symptoms of the adrenaline junkie nature of them. You could hear them all talk about wanting to get back there right away. It was just really a problem. And so I stood in front of about 400 of them one weekend, and I said, I'd like to build a program that does a better job of taking care of you. And I don't know what that needs to look like, but I'm betting you know what it needs to look like. And I would like your help in building it. And so we began back in about 2006, maybe. And we went looking for a program, not unlike you, where you're trying to find all the different programs and support, and let's put them all in one place for people. In this case, I went looking throughout the world for a program that I could just take and put into existence right where we were. And unfortunately, everything was unit oriented and company oriented and squadron oriented, and nothing was for individuals. And the part of the problem we were having was that these individuals were so isolated. They weren't talking with anyone. They believed that their experience was so unique. So we built this program. It took us a year. We basically created a curriculum. We trained facilitators. We got keynote speakers. And we called it the Returning Warrior Weekend program. We had amazing speakers. We had small group discussion and big group discussions. And some of the small group discussions were things like, why I want to go back. And, some marriages were dissolving because the first week back, the spouse, the military member would say they want to go back. And the home person who had been on the home front, taking care of kids and paying the bills was like, what? This destroyed them, and they took it very personally. But when you're in a room with, 20 people, and all of them, are asked, how many of you want to go back? And they all raise their hands. The marital member says, okay, this is not about me. This is not personal anymore. And so we taught them what the signs of PTSD were. We taught them, I did a presentation called Transformational Growth. We had chaplains and nurses and doctors and VA and VFW and sort of all the different supporting structures around the outside of us. And we had a lot of support on the inside. And it was really remarkable because I will tell you, as the commanding officer, I was nervous. I was quite sure someone would melt down in the middle of this, right? And this could be disastrous, right? I knew we were really getting people to talk, and this could cause triggers. And was just a lot. But we did measurements before and then after, and then 3 months later, and 100% of people said it was really beneficial and they recommended it for other people. And then we ended up doing it again. And then my Southwest Regional Commander said, I want you to spread this throughout the Southwest, which was a whole nother ball game, because it's one thing to build it in your backyard. It's another to now make it a cookie cutter duplicatable thing. And we did that. Ultimately, it went throughout the entire nation, and it's still in existence today. So it's been 19 years in existence and still going strong.
And what's it called?
It's called the Returning Warrior Weekend.
All right. And are you still part of it, or is that just?
No, I'm not. Actually, I went to, we had the funeral of one of our members, the founding members, that was still involved in it. And it was local to where I live in Arizona, and went to the funeral, and a lot of the initial group that helped build the program were there. And I actually was talking with some of the people who are still involved in it. And they showed me the program. I said, I'd love to see what you're doing today. It was almost identical to the program that we built. I mean, the agenda was spot on. I thought in 19 years they would have, really changed it, but they really didn't. And so that was really rewarding and fun to see. It was kind of one of those things that where this was my baby and I was handing it over to someone, and I almost just didn't want to see what they did. Like I also will tell you, I almost couldn't take it anymore. The secondary trauma, or I'm a very empathetic person, and hearing the stories over and over again in each weekend workshop, there were Navy chiefs crying, telling me I saved their marriage, or in some cases we got letters, you saved my life. And I would hear the stories and the heartache and the heartbreak, and it just undid me. And in the end, I was just like, I can't take it anymore. I could never be a corpsman. My hat's off to you, because what you all endure is so hard, and I just didn't have it. I was done.
Well, mine was easy. I was in physical therapy. But I worked in hydro, which most people couldn't deal with, which is burn patients and other wound care and other stuff, which I threw. That was like, I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lady who her leg was so big it split back open, and when I had to pack it, and I could see like all the different cells and all the way down. To me, it was like the coolest thing, because it was just like the book, but in real life, and I didn't have to cut them open.
Ooh. I love corpsmen. I had a lot of corpsmen that worked on my Returning Warrior Weekend shop with me. Most of them had served in the Marines. Is it all corpsmen? Do all corpsmen actually end up being embedded with the Marines? Because it felt that way.
Yeah, you do usually, because the Marines have no doctors, so they use the corpsmen as the docs when they go in deployment. And that was one of the reasons I didn't sign back up. Is I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and I guess I worked at the hospital, but I had EMT I had all this different training, and I taught EMT school. I taught all this different stuff, and they would have said, you're going no matter what. And I didn't. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I've seen too many people come back. And back to the reservists, I interviewed a guy, you probably watched it. He was 60 months over there as a reservist. That's just unheard of.
It is. And I have a friend who's gone back 6 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to be home, and you need to get some therapy. Like you need to transition back and integrate back, because he was just one of the guys that every time they'd say, who wants to go back, hand would go up, and he was. It is, I think, the hard part, and you've talked about this in some of your podcasts, is finding that meaning, that purpose, that here. When your purpose over there is so visible and so clear, and is life and death, and then you come back and maybe they're doing a desk job, or they're just not feeling it. They're not feeling the importance of their job or the meaningfulness, and it can be challenging. And they don't necessarily talk about their experiences over there.
No, nobody does. They bottle it up, and that's the problem. And it's important, because it's not just while you're in. I mean, the most important time you lose your purpose is the moment you get out. You have no idea what to do. You were so used to being told what to do. I remember the first this is nowhere close to it, but when I first got out of the high school, right? The first day you wake up, you're like, oh my God, I gotta go. No, I don't. What the heck? I was waiting to be deployed, into the Navy at the time. And it was like weird. Then later on you get out, you're like, oh my God, I don't have to do that anymore. It's like getting my master's. Oh my goodness, I don't have to go to school anymore. So yeah. But I'm one of those guys, I didn't walk on either. So, it's like, okay, what's next? And that's, again, comes from what we learned as kids. And that's why you probably heard where I say I know 80% of the people have PTSD have something that's from their childhood. And it could be 75, it could be 90, I don't know, but that's just from what I've talked to people. And I always ask them, and they're like, yeah, this is what happened to me as a kid. And I haven't had one person go, no, I had nothing.
I have nothing. I had a fabulous childhood. I had a wonderful upbringing. I had a great family. Everything in my life was sort of like golden. And then I married very badly twice. And the second marriage, well, both were physical and emotionally abusive. I got out of both of them barely, and the second one had a very long court battle to protect the girls. And there was PTSD from the need to protect the children and the court trauma, and that was completely unrelated to anything I'd ever experienced, but it was related to my own children, perhaps, and trying to keep them safe. But
I'm talking about from the military, the PTSD that people get in the military that gets exacerbated from your childhood.
yeah.
The question is, what in your life, and this is a psychologist thing, caused you to pick the same people twice?
That's a very good question. So especially they were both narcissists. They're very charming and hard. I didn't know anything about narcissism at the time, and I had this incredible father, wonderful role model, full of integrity, honor, super sweet, great marriage to my mom still to this day. Beautiful, loving, respectful, everything. I did not know that people could be so duplicitous or such good liars. I mean, I just assumed that when they were telling me things, they were telling me the truth. I ignored the hairs on the back of my neck that stood up. At that time, I didn't understand the animal brain and how smart it can be. I ignored my better sense in some cases. And so, but the second time, the first time shame on me. The second time was very different than the first time, but yeah. I would love to be able to answer that question better. And years of therapy haven't helped me. So
sorry, no, I'm not, because most of the time they tell us that we marry somebody in our, a caregiver, is who we normally marry. So, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, you just stopped moving, talking. So, yeah. So it's just sometimes that's what they say we marry. And so sometimes when I talk to people, then I ask them, they're like, "Oh, that was my mom, or that was my dad, or whatever," because that's just something we're used to. And some of us could have been somebody from that we worked with. The way that they dealt with us. Because I remember when I was dating my wife, we went on our first date, and we were talking about what we did, and I told her I was incarcerated once, and she almost ran out of there. I go, I was in the Navy, because it's a form of incarceration. It really is. You sign up, you can't get out until they let you out.
Wrong.
So there's so much that we dealt with that there could be many other reasons. But I always tell people, and not usually on this show, but make a list of what you want in somebody and only date that list.
Yeah, it's good advice.
Yeah, not what you don't want, what you want. And I'm talking be ridiculous. And I did it with my wife, before I met her. And the only thing she wasn't on my list was 5'9". She's 5'4". Because I wanted somebody in a totally different industry than me that had a degree, because my first two wives didn't have that. We always had problems and other stuff. And so, and then she had a list, which I didn't know about at the time, until later. And the only thing I wasn't on her list was a fireman, because she thought she wanted me gone every other night.
How funny.
Yeah. So it's, and military life is hard on marriages and hard on a bunch of stuff. And we sometimes learn to be very independent and not need somebody.
We absolutely have to, really. I think being a Navy spouse was much harder than being a naval officer.
Yeah. All right. So you did your 20, and you did, so this program you were talking about to help people with that, so they're using it, and I just want to be clear, to help people with their PTSD that they currently have, and help them deal with challenges. Is this still going? So you said still going on, but is it people that are in service only?
Okay. Active duty, and reservists they don't have to have PTSD. It is just a reintegration program back from the war zone into, you made the point in one of the podcasts that, we didn't used to be back in the normal world in 24 hours. We used to spend weeks on a boat to get back here. And so it helps them and their families transition, understand that this is going to take some time, understand that they can get through it, and understand the resources that they have available to them, and to get them beginning to talk and learn that they are part of a bigger community. So, yes.
Because I think that needs to be done for everybody in the service.
I agree with you. I think
Yeah.
I agree.
So if there's that program and you want to, I'm just, because I had a gentleman, I don't know if you listen to that episode, but he was a Marine for 10 years. Then he got incarcerated for 23 years. He did a TED talk. So you read, okay. And he's like, you need a boot camp out. And that's exactly what we need. And we need to push it. I know a lot of people who could push it through right now, and with some potential, hopefully changes, we could get some stuff done, possibly much easier.
Yeah.
So I'm game for it. You wrote the program.
Well, I'll share with you that I'll send it to you, and you can put it in your list of places and wonderful things for the service members and military and thereafter, because it is certainly worthwhile. And it's interesting. When I was living in Indiana, I was getting an X-ray, and somehow we got on the subject that I was in the Navy, and she talked about her husband having just gone through a returning warrior weekend program and how important it was and how helpful it was. And I just couldn't believe it. Here in the middle of Indiana, I'm running into somebody who's gone through that program. So it was, to your point though, Ed, that was a pretty high, very intrinsically rewarding job. And leaving the Navy and leaving that job, that was the last thing I did in the Navy, was hard, because now I'm in a civilian job. I don't have the same meaning and purpose, certainly not the same intrinsic reward. And I'm in technology. I'm in, hardware network sort of technology, then software technology. Then I was the dean of a boarding school, and then back into network technology. All of which I enjoyed immensely, but none of which filled that hole of purpose and meaning like what I've recently discovered, which is helping people with their health.
And how did you get into this? Because you were a service officer in the Navy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
And what people understand, and medical officers don't necessarily go on ships, but service officers are the ones who definitely go on ships.
So. Yeah. So, I finally got it right. In fact, after husband number 2, I was never going to get married again, never going to date again. Like, that's where I was for a long time.
I was 3. So it took me to the third one. Yeah.
I finally got it right in this third one. And my husband was an angel sent from above, and truly the greatest man on the planet. And heart of gold, and Navy captain, carrier wing commander, did 30 years, and went in the, we were married. We've been married 17 years. And about when he was age 64 or so, about 5 years ago, he began to exhibit symptoms of memory loss, and ultimately was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. And in my hunt and search to try to help him, I kept coming across the fact that stem cells seem to be really the only thing making a difference. So we went out of country about 4 times and got stem cell IVs and injections at $10,000 a pop. I mean, that one year we spent $120,000 on medical. I was like, I'm going to have to mortgage the house. But what wouldn't you do to turn around Alzheimer's? And nothing we did was helping. I mean, we tried hyperbaric chamber 3 times a week. We did ozone therapy. We certainly revamped the diet: no alcohol, no sugar, no white flour, no soda, nothing that was genetically modified, only organic, grass-fed, grass-finished. I mean, you name it, we did it, including daily strength and exercise and keto and sleep protocol and infrared sauna. I mean, I could go on and on. Nothing made a difference until I was introduced to this technology where someone said to me, and for the people outside of the United States, and I may have an international audience, this activates your body's own your copper peptide GHKCU, which then activates stem cells, which I'm going to call master foundational cells, because the FDA and FTC have recently decided that your stem cells in your body are a drug. So I can't talk to them apparently, but we'll call them master foundational cells, and everyone will understand. When you're 30, half of them are dormant, and when you're 60, they're almost all dormant. And we began to use this tiny little patch that's the size of a quarter. I had zero belief in. I had 100% skepticism, but I was just desperate. So introduced, and we began to patch both my husband and myself. I had 4 autoimmune disorders, so I had been doing the IV stem cell injections and IV out of country as well. And in the very first week, my husband went from really being a shell of his former self and a zombie and sleeping 3.5-hour naps, falling asleep at 7, no longer really engaging in conversation, asking the same question 7 times in 3 minutes, really not even his personality anymore, cognitively age 4, 5, to waking up, engaging like a dam broken. He had all this stuff to say and really talkative with it, funny and flirty again. I got my husband back. Now, I will tell you, lots of improvements happened in the next time frame. He regained the ability to whistle and drum, and he regained his ability to smell at the 5-month mark, even though he'd lost his sense of smell 15 years ago. He was sleeping better. He went from 15 minutes deep sleep to 1 hour and 40 minutes of deep sleep, and blood pressure dropped, and all sorts of amazing things happened. He is 19 months now later. Other things are declining. The things that got better have stayed better, but other things have declined. I had a broken foot, a sprained ankle, depression, and autoimmune issues. And all of that, my depression lifted in several weeks, like 2 to 3 weeks. My pain went away right away. My I just have no symptoms. I had one autoimmune disorder that I had, which is called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia. You may understand what that is because of being a corpsman, but I would pass out. I'd have such low blood pressure that I wasn't getting enough blood to the brain, and they prescribed fluorocortisol, which is a blood pressure medicine to increase my blood pressure to keep me from passing out. And I think I was diagnosed with that somewhere around 2004. And I had been on that medicine. And once I started patching with these little patches, they just changed my life. And I never had to use that medicine again. And I don't have fainting episodes, and I don't have any symptoms of autoimmune disorders anymore. And they really, I first started sharing with my mom and my dad and my sister, and dove into the over 130 clinical studies, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, and learned all about this copper peptide GHKCU, which I had never heard of, but you could Google it in PubMed and see that not only does GHKCU increase your stem cells, but it actually has amazing anti-cancer benefits. It has amazing improvements for the brain and the nerves, the lungs, the heart. Every 6 weeks you wear our patch, your cardiovascular system becomes 8 weeks younger. In just 6 weeks, you can see the brain. If you look at my website, you can actually see the brain in the EEG images. You can see the inflammation going away, and you can see the nervous system calming, and people have improved memory and cognition. So it's just been life-changing for me. And as a result, I was kind of mad, Ed. I was mad that I had done all this research. I had talked to all these doctors, specialists from all walks of life. Nobody had talked about these things with me. And especially mad when I learned there were over 300 Olympic athletes that were wearing these patches in 2008, and that the Tom Brady and the Kansas City Chiefs are wearing the patches. And I'm like, why don't people know about this? Why? Well, I can tell you why. It's because people no longer need their pharmaceutical medicines when you are on these patches. That gets to the root problem. Your body has an innate wisdom, and it knows how to heal. And there's no medicine in the patch. It's just light therapy. It's reflecting your own light back into you at a very specific wavelength, like a little mirror, like the same way when you go outside in the sun and your body responds and makes vitamin D or melanin. If I looked at you with night vision goggles on, I would see light inside of you. And so what this is, like a little mirror reflecting your own light back at a very specific wavelength. And that is how it's operating. It elevates those peptides and causes your body to tap into its own innate wisdom and rush and create the responses that your body needs to optimize its own health. So it's phenomenal. But I began to then really want to share with those people, because somebody right now is where I was. If I would have started 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, if we would have known about this early on, we wouldn't be where we are today with him. And there's somebody out there right now who needs this today, and it's there 5 years ago for them.
Now you said our patch.
Yes, so it's a company that I'm
I,
now.
I listen to what people say.
What did
I
you
said I
say?
listen to what people say when
Yeah,
they're
you're
talking.
very good. So you're excellent podcaster. I really
Well, thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
your podcast. I appreciate your heart, your servant leadership heart, actually, as well. And one of the things I love about our company, which is very, very supportive of our veterans. They've done great work. They've donated thousands of patches to people that were military or the police, and also they're sponsor for the National Veterans of America Wheelchair Games, and they donated a ton. I mean, like 5,000 patches, the pain relief patches, and the activation, the Master Foundational Cell Activation patch. And we had people that had spinal stenosis and 7 surgeries, and people who could only be in a wheelchair, start walking. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary what these can do. And some of my favorite patch stories are of veterans. There was a ranger that's a friend of mine, high school friend of mine, who was the only guy in the helicopter when it was hit with an anti-air missile. Everybody exploded. It broke into millions of pieces. It dropped to the ground. He somehow, by the grace of God, survived. He broke his neck in a million different spots, right? They had to fuse it together, put a little shell around it. He was in a coma for months. They told him, "You'll never walk." And he over time did learn to walk on his own. And I met up with him just in the last year, and he began to patch. And he's just, his response has been so fabulous, and just the things that he talks about, and how much better he feels, and how much more he can walk, and how he's out of pain, and just that. This is, to me, like my Returning Warrior Weekend program was. Like, this is giving me that intrinsic reward and that feeling of paying it forward and doing something good. It also is a bit of a silver lining to my this journey of grief I'm in the midst of. It's a very tough situation to be caring for someone with early Alzheimer's. That's your spouse, because you lose your best friend and your partner and everything. And in the midst of this grief, you have to keep going, and you have to keep providing, and you have to somehow not play the woe is me game every day. And this calling has helped me help other people and keep the focus off of me, and feeling like a victim.
Well, I don't know. Thank you for sharing everything. What I want to say right now is, um, 18 months ago, 20 months ago, when my whole industry fell apart because of the interest rates went up, I was very upset because it destroyed what we had built with nothing that I did wrong. I didn't do it. It was nothing, we had a amazing team, amazing everything. And I was I went through, I do a lot of this and I watch a lot of people and stuff. And one of the guys I know, he was talking about how this one person that had just passed away and he was in a wheelchair, and it was, all the stuff he would have thought how bad it was for his life. But he's like, when something happens to him, he always said, I'd see if this was happened to me or happened for me. And so since then, I've been on a search to figure out what to do. Because I love helping vets get into homes and everything else, because it changes and people, because of the trajectory of their life and everything else and how they're financial. But you can still do that and still have not that calling anymore. So I've been looking to, because I do a lot of podcasts. I enjoy veteran podcasts more than anything else. This is kind of, all of a sudden I have another podcast. I've had a podcast called Inner Edison, which is your greatest accomplishments come from your greatest defeats. It's a business one. I've had it for 3 years. It was in the top 1% of all podcasts throughout, the world. Thank you. Then I stopped it for 6 months because I got tired of people not explaining their failures and talking about it. And I'm like, I'm tired of this, people. I don't want, you say you're going to come on and talk about it. And then you say, well, my biggest failure was I lost 20 grand. What? That's not a, and then I was like, then, it just depends on each person, what it was. But then I got to a point, well, all of a sudden my vision for this has changed to where I talk to a lot of people after not only their little transition out of the service and what they did, but what they're doing now and more involved, kind of like what we're doing here. And I don't know if you noticed that with the last few last probably 20, there's all of a sudden this push over to where more people are coming on that have our businesses and what they're talking about, because it's important to get into. We're great for businesses, we're great to do stuff, we have attention to detail, we know how to make a phone call, we don't hide behind email and texting, we can look you in the eye, we can talk to you. And that's what's so important about vets. We need to help them get out, help them transition. And that program that you created to help them, we're going to need more of that. We're going to need help for that. This stuff what you're doing right now, we need that. You probably heard this. I talked about my fire walk I did for veterans. I'm doing it again May 3rd. I'm looking for people to come out and be part of it and grow it. We want to. I didn't know how big I wanted it to get. It was just to help one veteran. Well, it's more than that. We got so many people pushing me to do more things, and I want to know more about this. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, this is the most amazing company, and I'm careful not to use the company name. I'd rather people reach out to me, because the first thing they'll do is they'll start Googling it, and they'll start trying to come up with reasons not to believe.
There's been tests, right? They've done tests.
They've done 130 clinical tests. It's better studied than any supplement or drug that you've ever taken. So the studies are clear. And my website offers you'll see everything you need. You can see the studies, the patents, the videos. You can dive in. You can see pictures of the athletes wearing. I mean, there's an anesthesiologist and 40-year physician who said, this is the most significant medical breakthrough in my lifetime. And there are, 4 of my doctors are using these patches, but they didn't tell me about them when I started. And this is available in 87 countries. This is not just here, and there's no contraindications with any medicines. So whatever medicines people, I don't care if you're doing CBD or psilocybin mushrooms.
I don't care what you do as long as it helps you.
It doesn't matter to me, and it's not going to matter to this patch because there's no medicine in the patch. You can actually put it on the outside of your clothing or in a pocket. And it's still going to work for you because the light is going to go through there. There's a money back guarantee. And guess what? It's so affordable, relatively speaking. I mean, if you look at what insulin costs or some medicines, right? They're very pricey. Ozempic, for God's sakes, any of these things. And these are patches that can get you out of pain. I have to be careful because the company's going to say we can't cure, treat, prevent, or, disease. And that's true because it's really your body doing it, right? It's your body doing this. We don't make those claims. But these things happen. People no longer need their medicines. They don't need their thyroid medicine. They don't need their blood pressure medicine. They don't need their cholesterol medicine. They don't need their pain medicine, headache medicine. They don't need, insulin. It cuts in half. And people who have been on their deathbed, including this girlfriend of mine's cousin who had end-stage Agent Orange. He's a veteran. In bed round the clock 24/7. And they basically said, he had sold all of his cows. He had a farm, sold all of his cows, was in a wheelchair. And they said, there's nothing we can do for you, but we're going to give you this pill. It's going to kill you, but it's going to give you a higher quality of life until you die. That's where he was. And she said, please don't do this. Please try these patches. And so he did. And in 3 days, he was out of bed, not using a wheelchair. In 2 weeks, he was traveling. He traveled to see USS Arizona, which was on his bucket list. And he actually donated back his walker and his wheelchair and doesn't use it anymore. Eventually bought all of his cows back. His white cell count is good. He is living a higher quality life than he was 2 decades ago. And I've seen so many of these kind of miracle stories that it's phenomenal. And you don't have to have this horrible disease. You can start reverse aging and improve your telomeres and improve your length of life and improve your quality of life. It can be something as simple as you just need more energy. You just want to sleep better. You just want to have less wrinkles. You want more collagen. You want more cartilage. You don't want a knee replacement. There was a study done with 3 of our patches, one that elevates glutathione, one that reduces inflammation, and the other one that increases the master foundational cells. And those 3 patches for 3 months, none of the participants in the study went on to have knee replacement or knee surgery like they were all scheduled to have. So there are phenomenal things. And so part of what I do now is I know the patches inside out. I've read all the studies. I know how to help place them. We follow usually energy meridians and acupressure points. And I help people titrate up because you don't want to detox too quickly. They will actually cause, when you start elevating your glutathione levels, you can start detoxing. So we need to drink water. There's ways to boost the immune system. There's a couple books. One book called the How to Reverse Aging, A Comprehensive Guide to Copper Peptides. He's basically taken all the studies on GHKCU, put them in a book, and then said, there are 3 ways to get GHKCU. You can get it through injection, which a lot of cancer clinics do. You can get it through creams, which are hard to get the right dosage and enough, actually. And then you can get it through our patches, which is the easiest and most affordable way. There's another book called The Reverse Power of Epitalon, and that's the epitalon is the synthetic version of what our patch elevates, which is epithalamum, and that helps your improves your organ health. Well, when it does that, it actually reduces fine lines and wrinkles in your face. And it does that because your skin is your largest organ. And when you start to improve the health of your skin, it's actually an outward reflection of improvement of your inner organ health. And we've had people who were supposed to have a liver transplant, and 2 months of patching, they go to do the intake for the liver transplant, and the doctor says, I don't know what you've been doing, but you don't need a liver transplant anymore. I mean, miracle after miracle after miracle on these patches. So there's no one that couldn't benefit. And it can be someone that's a child who has autism. We've patched a lot of families, and they've gone from my friend that has been sort of my mentor in teaching me about these patches. Her daughter was 16, but academically or cognitively kindergarten. In 2 weeks, so day 15, she came off all of her ADHD medicines, never to be on them again. She was always like this, buzzing around and moving since an infant. And all of a sudden, she had this calm nature. And then at 5 weeks, they did a full panel because her scores, she was just doing so much better with the tutor. Her best score had ever been 52 in math, and she got 100. So they did a full panel, and she had gone from kindergarten to upper third, lower fourth grade in 5 weeks. 5 weeks on one patch. You wear a patch 12 hours, you take it off, you throw it away, or you put it on a pet. It actually is very good for pets too. We've had pets who couldn't walk anymore, were paralyzed, and 3 days after patching, they're running around like puppies. So it's really a phenomenal technology that not enough people know about. And one of my heart's desires is to help every veteran I can to get their hands on these because they are affordable. They all are alternative. They're safe enough for our active duty military. They're safe enough for anybody, no matter what if you've got a security clearance and you don't want to be taking heavy meds, or you have an addiction problem, whatever the issues, these can get you out of pain without medicine. So I am a huge proponent. I used to be incredibly, I had no social footprint. I would never have imagined myself on a podcast, Ed, in a million years, never. Certainly fine talking with people, but not publicly, like not on a podcast. But here we are because I feel so passionate about it. And I really just want to help people and pay that forward because it's really changed my life. It's changed my health. Immediately, I was a better care provider because I was so much more patient, so much more calm, so much happier because I was no longer depressed, not sick, not aching, no longer in pain. All of those things impact, when you look at what PTSD is, just the anger, the biggest impact of that is not necessarily to yourself. It's to your loved ones around you. It's who are you taking out that anger on? And I never wanted that to be the case to my husband or my kids or anything ever. And this makes a huge difference on that front.
All right. So you work for the company? Because you said our company.
I am a brand ambassador. So I'm a brand partner, and I became a brand partner just to get wholesale product. You can buy it wholesale and become a brand partner without ever having shared it, without ever buying it a second time. There's no obligation. So there's like 5 different ways. You can buy retail, and then it would be $150 instead of $99 for a 1 month supply. Why would anybody do that? There's actually, it's a better deal. You still have the money back guarantee. It just doesn't make any sense. But you may not know like one of me. Like if you didn't know one of me, you'd end up on a page, you'd get retail. But I can help people get those wholesale prices and also just help hold their hand through the patching.
Is it basically like you sell it through other people? Is that how that works for the company?
You can. I'm
trying to understand the process.
It's direct sales. So you would, if you, for example, decided to become a brand, let's just say you say, Ed says, I want to try this out. So you begin to try it out, you patch, and your 80% of people experience a positive result in 3 to 6 weeks. This is not overnight, other than the pain relief. Pain relief is overnight. But the root regeneration of foundational cells, that takes time. And we say a month for every decade you are old. But I think for people with really tough issues, plan on 9 months, plan on doing at least this one patch, that $99 patch, 1 month. The other patches, like the anti-inflammation patch, it's only $49 a month supply if you're buying them in a kit or in a quantity of 3. So all that said, you would say, okay, you would be like me. You get this experience and you're just like blown away. And you say, hey, mom, dad, or sis, brother, or loved one anywhere in the, favorite best friend, you need to try these. And then they would basically order underneath you. You make a small thank you check for that. That's not really where money is made. There is a little thank you check for that, but it's not a lot. Over time, though, there is this sort of tree of volume that occurs, and that person tells 2 people, and that person tells people, and all of a sudden you have a volume, and the volume is what ends up creating passive residual income. Nobody needs to tell you about passive residual income and how beneficial that is. That's my future retirement plan. Yes, I have a military retirement. I have to pay a big chunk of that to my ex-husband, which annoys me every month. But this is my future retirement plan.
No disability from the Navy?
Yes, some. Yes, I did. And I'm actually working on my husband's. It's frustrating the daylights out of me because
I know who you need to talk to. I just interviewed him.
I need them.
I just interviewed them, and we're going to do something because he's a Ranger, and he I'll tell you afterwards because this is about you right now. So they would have already listened to this one. But I was like, wow, because I signed up for their stuff about, I don't know, September. I mean, a long time ago, not this year, September, a long time ago. And then I just ignored it because I was trying to get mine upped because they gave me really a low. And at the time back when that happened, nobody fought it. And then it's a long story. So, but let's finish with you.
My husband should have unemployability right now. My husband should be 100% disabled. He is cognitively 4. He cannot toilet by himself. He cannot write his name. He cannot read.
You should also be getting money for caregiving.
All of that. But I've submitted that and they came back and they go, no. And I'm like, no, what do you mean?
Well, we're going to get to the right person.
Thank you.
So we'll talk right after this. All right. So anything else for people want to find out more about this, how they find you?
They find me on my website. I am reverseaging.com. So that's IAMREVERSEAGING. And
reverse aging.
I am
reverseaging.com.
And there they can contact me and link to me. They can browse and look at videos and learn more. They can order from there, but my preference is that you actually connect with me and let me help you place the order so you don't end up accidentally getting retail, and you understand which patches are best and kind of how to gradually do that. The only requirement really is to drink water. But I'd like to hold people's hand through the process and make sure that they're patching properly, particularly the pain relief patches. If you need those, they're placement specific and they require a little bit of an art and science to those. So, but yeah, I would love to connect with people. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also in Facebook. But if you connect with me on Facebook, you're going to have to send me a message that says, I'm interested, because I get a lot of messages on Facebook that I don't respond to because you know what that's like.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I ignored them. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate you sharing your story and talking about this.
Thanks, Ed. It's such a pleasure. And I just thank you for what you do. I really am grateful to you and to all of your, really, not just your efforts, but your heart. It's always in the right place. And you just are always putting out there great guidance, counsel, and resources for veterans and families of veterans.
Well, please refer and let people know that it's out there because it
I
needs some
know.
help. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Again, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.